There was a time when driving wasn't just about getting from one place to another. It was a spectacle. In the 1950s, the United States was living through one of the most optimistic periods in its history. Highways were expanding, cities were growing, and automakers began creating cars that weren't just machines, but true statements of style. And no type of car captured that spirit better than convertibles. Long cars, filled with chrome, painted in vibrant colors, and carrying a presence that seemed designed to attract attention, even when standing completely still. Machines built not only to be driven, but to be seen. In this video, we're going to explore some of the most beautiful American convertibles of the 1950s. Let's begin. 1959, Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz. And this is exactly where this list had to begin. Because if there is a convertible that perfectly represents the elegant excess of the 1950s, it's this one. In a decade when Detroit was competing to see who could build the most impressive car, Cadillac decided to go further than anyone else. The result was a vehicle that still feels almost unreal today. Visually, the 1959 Eldorado is impossible to confuse with anything else. The enormous tail fins, probably the most famous in the entire history of the American automobile, dominate the rear with spectacular presence. The chrome seems endless, the proportions are massive, and every angle of the car communicates a mixture of luxury, optimism, and pure showmanship. This wasn't a car designed to be discreet. It was a car designed to be remembered. But the Eldorado Biarritz wasn't just about design. It was also one of the most exclusive convertibles Cadillac offered at the time. Under the hood sat the massive 390 cubic inch V8, producing about 345 gross horsepower, a very serious number for the late 1950s. It wasn't a lightweight sports car, but it had more than enough power to move this large convertible with real authority on the highway. And as expected for a car of this level, production was quite limited. In 1959, Cadillac built approximately 1,320 Eldorado Biarritz convertibles, making it one of the brand's most exclusive open-top cars of the decade. Today, that status is clearly reflected in the market. A well-preserved 1959 Eldorado Biarritz typically ranges between $150,000 and over $300,000 depending on condition and originality. Some concours-level restorations can exceed those numbers. It wasn't just a Cadillac, it was a statement of style on wheels. And what's most interesting is that even with a car as spectacular as this, the 1950s still had many more beautiful convertibles to offer. 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. Now the tone changes. But the elegance doesn't disappear, because while the Eldorado represented Cadillac's extreme luxury, the Bel Air represents something slightly different. One of the most beloved and recognizable cars in American history. Few silhouettes are as easy to identify as this one. The pronounced rear fins, the massive chrome trim, and the famous two-tone color combinations created a car that seemed designed to shine under the sun. And in convertible form, that design became even more special. With the top down, it revealed clean and perfectly balanced lines, which explains why this model remains one of the most photographed and restored classics even today. It was elegant, but also accessible. Unlike Cadillac, Chevrolet was building a car that far more people could afford. And yet, it still managed to create one of the most memorable designs of the entire decade. But the Bel Air wasn't just about style. In its most interesting configurations, it could be equipped with the famous 283 cubic inch small block V8, which in some versions produced up to 283 horsepower thanks to the optional fuel injection system. That meant one very clear thing for the time. This elegant convertible could also move with surprising energy. In terms of production, Chevrolet built around 48,000 Bel Air convertibles in 1957. That makes it much more common than some of the cars on this list, but it also explains why it became a true cultural icon. Today, a well-restored example typically ranges between $90,000 and $150,000, with exceptional cars easily exceeding that range. It wasn't the most expensive convertible of the 1950s, but it was one of the most charismatic, and also one of the cars that best captured the optimistic spirit of the entire decade. 1955 Ford Thunderbird. Now, the list takes an interesting turn. Because after two large American convertibles filled with chrome and massive proportions, the next car decides to do something different. When Ford introduced the Thunderbird, the idea wasn't to compete directly with the large luxury convertibles. The goal was to create something more personal, more compact, and far more elegant. A car designed to enjoy the road, not just impress with size. Visually, it was completely different from almost everything that existed at the time. The body was lower, shorter, and much cleaner than the enormous convertibles coming out of Detroit. The long hood, the rear-set cabin, and the chrome accents created a balance that many people still consider one of the most elegant designs of the entire decade. It was a convertible, but with the spirit of a roadster, and that character was also reflected in what it carried under the hood. It came equipped with a 292 cubic inch V8, capable of producing around 193 horsepower. It wasn't a muscle car, but in a lighter and more compact car like this, it delivered fairly lively performance for the time. It was the perfect kind of car for cruising long, open highways, with the top down and the sound of the V8 accompanying the journey. In terms of production, Ford built around 16,000 Thunderbirds in 1955, a relatively low number compared to other popular models of the decade. And over time, that status has been reflected in the classic car market. Today, a well-preserved 1955 Thunderbird typically ranges between $70,000 and $120,000, with exceptional examples easily exceeding that range. And now, I want to hear your opinion. Among the three cars we've seen so far, the spectacular Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz, the iconic Chevrolet Bel Air Convertible, or the elegant Ford Thunderbird, which one do you think is the most beautiful convertible of the 1950s? Let me know in the comments. Because what comes next takes us back into the territory of American luxury in its most impressive form. 1958 Buick Limited. Now, we return to American luxury in its most exaggerated form, because while the Thunderbird showed a more compact and sporty interpretation of the American convertible, the Buick Limited represents exactly the opposite, a huge, imposing car built to communicate absolute prestige. By the late 1950s, Buick was competing directly with Cadillac for buyers who wanted uncompromising luxury, and the Limited was the brand's most ambitious answer. Visually, it was impossible to ignore. The body was enormous, with a massive front grille, huge amounts of chrome, and a presence that seemed to dominate any street or avenue. It was one of those cars that didn't try to be discreet. It tried to be impressive. And in convertible form, that entire design became even more spectacular. With the top down, the long lines of the car extended uninterrupted, revealing proportions that simply no longer exist in modern automobiles. It was pure late 1950s American luxury. But the Limited wasn't just about appearance. Under the hood was the powerful 364 cubic inch V8, capable of producing around 300 gross horsepower. A very respectable figure for a luxury car of that size in 1958. That allowed this enormous convertible to move with surprising authority for its weight. In terms of production, the Limited was a relatively exclusive model within Buick's lineup. In 1958, just over 7,400 units were built, and the convertible versions represent only a small portion of that total. Today, a well-preserved Buick Limited convertible typically ranges between $80,000 and $140,000, with particularly well-restored examples reaching even higher numbers at auctions. It wasn't the most famous convertible of the 1950s, but it was one of the most luxurious, and one of the cars that best represented Detroit's elegant excess during that decade. 1953, Buick Skylark. Now, the list becomes much more exclusive. Because while the Buick Limited represented luxury on a grand scale, the Skylark was something completely different. A convertible created to celebrate Buick's 50th anniversary. And from the beginning, it was clear that it wouldn't be an ordinary car. Visually, it was one of the most elegant convertibles Buick had produced up to that point. The body was low, flowing, and far more refined than most American cars of the early 1950s. The lines were clean, the proportions were very balanced, and the chrome details were carefully integrated into the design. Even the cut-down rear wheel openings gave it a more sophisticated and sporty appearance. It was luxury, but with a very different kind of elegance. Inside, it also displayed the highest level of refinement Buick could offer at the time, with high-quality leather interiors and finishes designed for buyers who wanted something truly special. But beyond elegance, the Skylark also had enough power to support its image. Under the hood was the 322 cubic inch nailhead V8, capable of producing around 188 horsepower, a very respectable number for a luxury convertible in 1953. That gave it smooth performance and enough strength to enjoy long, open roads with the top down, exactly as Buick had imagined for this car. But what truly makes the Skylark special is its production. In 1953, Buick built only 1,690 Skylarks, making it one of the most exclusive convertibles the brand produced during the entire decade. Today, that level of rarity is clearly reflected in the market. A well-preserved 1953 Buick Skylark typically ranges between $180,000 and $300,000, with exceptional examples reaching even higher numbers at auctions. 1957 Chrysler 300C. Now, we arrive at one of the most interesting convertibles on this entire list. Because while we've seen elegant and luxurious cars so far, the 300C added something else to the equation: serious performance. During the 1950s, the Chrysler 300 Series had already begun to build a very particular reputation. They were luxury cars, yes, but they were also among the most powerful automobiles Detroit offered at the time, and the 300C took that idea even further. Visually, the car had a strong presence that stood apart from many convertibles of the era. The body was long and muscular, with an imposing grille, sharply defined lines, and the large tail fins that were beginning to dominate American design toward the end of the decade. It was elegant, but it also had character. But the real story was under the hood. It carried the massive 392 cubic inch Hemi V8, capable of producing around 375 gross horsepower. By the late 1950s, that figure placed it among the most powerful cars in America, and that made this convertible something very special: luxury with real muscle. But what truly makes it stand out today is its exclusivity. In 1957, Chrysler built only about 484 units of the 300C convertible, making it one of the rarest models of the famous letter car series. Today, that level of rarity has turned it into an extremely desirable collector's piece. A well-preserved example can easily range between $250,000 and more than $400,000 depending on condition and documentation. And now, I want to hear your opinion. Among the last three cars we've seen, the massive Buick Limited, the elegant Buick Skylark, or the powerful Chrysler 300C, which one do you think is the most impressive convertible of the 1950s? Let me know in the comments. 1956 Packard Caribbean. Now, we enter one of the most exclusive and refined convertibles of the entire decade. In the 1950s, Packard was still trying to remain at the top of American luxury, competing directly with Cadillac and Lincoln for buyers who wanted the best Detroit could offer. And the Caribbean represented exactly that, the most prestigious model in the entire Packard lineup. Visually, it was one of the most elegant convertibles of its time. The body was long and beautifully proportioned, with abundant chrome, refined details, and a presence that communicated luxury from every angle. But one of the elements that truly made it stand out was its famous tri-tone color combinations, something very uncommon at the time. These three color schemes, combined with a carefully finished interior, made the Caribbean appear even more exclusive when cruising with the top down. It was clearly a car designed for very specific customers who wanted something different. But beyond luxury, the Caribbean also delivered serious power. Under the hood sat Packard's 374 cubic inch V8, capable of producing around 310 horsepower, a very respectable number for a luxury convertible in the mid-1950s. That allowed this elegant Packard to move with real authority for its size, combining comfort and performance in a way few brands managed at the time. But what truly makes it special is its production. In 1956, Packard built only about 276 Caribbean convertibles, making it one of the rarest American convertibles of the entire decade. Today, that level of exclusivity is clearly reflected in the classic car market. A well-preserved 1956 Packard Caribbean typically ranges between $180,000 and $300,000, with concourse-level restorations reaching even higher figures at auctions. It wasn't the most famous convertible of the 1950s, but it was one of the most exclusive and one of the last great luxury convertibles Packard produced before the end of its story. 1954. Oldsmobile 98 Starfire. After the extremely exclusive Packard Caribbean, the list shifts slightly in tone, but without losing elegance, because this car represents another type of American luxury. It wasn't designed to impress through rarity or extravagance, but through something far more important at the time: balanced presence. In the 1950s, Oldsmobile occupied a very interesting position in Detroit. It wasn't as extravagant as Cadillac, but it wasn't an ordinary car either. It was aimed at buyers who wanted something refined, powerful, and elegant, without unnecessary excess. And the Starfire captured that philosophy perfectly. Visually, the car is pure classic American balance. The body is long, well-proportioned, and very clean for the standards of the decade. The long hood, flowing sideline, and chrome details create a silhouette that communicates luxury without relying on dramatic excess. With the top down, it became the perfect car for the long American highways of the 1950s. Spacious, comfortable, and carrying that calm presence that made everything feel just a little more elegant. Inside, the atmosphere followed the same logic. Generous seats, high-quality materials, and a cabin designed for relaxed and comfortable travel, something Oldsmobile did extremely well during this era. But beyond elegance, the Starfire also had enough power to support its size. Under the hood was the famous 324 cubic inch rocket V8, producing around 185 gross horsepower. It wasn't an aggressive sports car, but it delivered the kind of smooth, steady power that made driving a large American convertible such a special experience. Today, a well-preserved 1954 Oldsmobile 98 Starfire convertible typically ranges between $60,000 and $120,000, depending on condition and originality. 1959 Pontiac Bonneville. Now, we arrive at one of the most spectacular convertibles on the entire list. By the late 1950s, Pontiac was going through an important transformation. The brand wanted to move away from the conservative image it had carried for years and begin competing directly with Buick, Oldsmobile, and even Cadillac in terms of style and presence. Visually, this convertible represents everything that made late 1950s American cars unique. The body is long, low, and extremely dramatic, with enormous chrome surfaces, a bold front grille, and massive tail fins that seem to stretch toward the sky. It was impossible to ignore. From any angle, the Bonneville communicates that mixture of luxury, optimism, and theatrical design that defined American automotive styling in 1959. With the top down, the proportions become even more impressive, creating a long, flowing silhouette that seems made for cruising the great American highways. But Pontiac didn't want the Bonneville to be just about appearance. Under the hood was one of the brand's most serious engines at the time, the 389 cubic inch V8, capable of producing around 300 gross horsepower in many of its configurations. That meant that beyond being elegant and spectacular, this convertible also had enough power to move its enormous body with real authority. Today, a well-preserved 1959 Pontiac Bonneville convertible typically ranges between $70,000 and $130,000, depending on condition, originality, and restoration quality. 1956 Cadillac Series 62. And now, we reach the final car on this list, with one of the most respected names in all of American luxury. In the 1950s, Cadillac wasn't just an automaker, it was a symbol. It represented success, prestige, and a very clear idea of what it meant to have made it in post-war America. Visually, the car perfectly captures the balance Cadillac had achieved in the middle of the decade. The body is long, low, and extremely refined. The lines are clean, the proportions impeccable, and the chrome details are placed with a precision that communicates luxury without falling into excess. We are not yet in the era of the massive 1959 tail fins. Here the design is more restrained, but incredibly elegant. With the top down, it became a true statement of style. It was the kind of car that seemed built for wide boulevards, classic hotels, and long, sunny highways. Everything about its presence communicated confidence. Under the hood sat the 365 cubic inch V8, capable of producing around 305 gross horsepower. For the mid-1950s, that was a very serious figure, and more than enough to move this large convertible smoothly and confidently down the road. In terms of production, Cadillac built just over 8,000 Series 62 convertibles in 1956, making it exclusive but still attainable for buyers of the time. Today, that combination of classic design, brand prestige, and timeless elegance keeps it highly valued in the classic car world. A well-preserved example typically ranges between $90,000 and $150,000, with especially original or Concours restored cars easily exceeding that range. After going through all of these cars, one thing becomes very clear. The 1950s weren't just a decade of growing power and bold design. They were also a time when the American convertible became an absolute symbol of style, freedom, and presence. Some were rarer. Others were more powerful. Others simply had a presence impossible to ignore. But they all shared something very special. They were cars built to be enjoyed under the open sky, with the sound of a V8 accompanying the journey and an endless road ahead. And now, I want to hear your opinion. Of all the convertibles we saw today, which one would you choose as the most beautiful American convertible of the 1950s? Let me know in the comments, because it's always interesting to see which of these machines wins over true enthusiasts. And if you enjoyed this journey through classic convertibles of the decade, don't miss the video now appearing on your screen, where we explore the most beautiful American wagons of the 1950s. Cars that combined elegance, space, and style in a way that has almost disappeared today. Click the video, continue the journey through the golden age of the American automobile, and I'll see you in the next one.